OverDrive continues, powered by FanDuel. We've got our best bets later in the hour. We've got Darren Dreger coming up here in a few moments. Robert Turbin later in the hour on this report also about Jerod Mayo, maybe why he was fired in New England. There was a report I think The Athletic had that was indicating after one particular blowout loss, I think they were in L.A. flying back to New England, he was in the back of the plane playing cards with the players. And I guess some of the executives and other coaches were like, I'm sure that's the best look there, Jerod. You're the coach now. You're not a player.
Yeah.
Any coach that would want to go back and play cards with the players is possibly the dumbest thing you could ever do in your life.
Mm. Yeah. You have to separate, right? You have to, especially after a bad loss. Like, they got smoked.
Dude, I don't care if you won 10 games in a row. It's the stupidest thing you would ever think about doing.
It's just there's a line. You have to, when you go across the hall, we call it, behind the curtain into business and coaching and all of that, like into management, there is a line. Like, it's a difference if you're at a Christmas party or something, you have a few drinks, but sitting at the back of the plane, like, there is a line. Management sits at the front, players at the back. Like, that's it. Like, you can't cross over that. Like, to me, it's dumb.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's just it sounds like it's a guy that wasn't prepared, right? Still looks at himself probably as a player, kind of. You know, that's kind of what it indicates. And now he's out in New England. So we'll get into that with Robert later in the hour. So I want to play this Buster Olney clip. He was on First Up this morning with Carlo and AK. And, trying to describe the offseason so far for the Blue Jays. Tomorrow is a very, very significant day. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., that's the deadline. You've got to work out a deal with Vladdy if you're the Jays and other players who are eligible, right? Varsho's eligible. Yeah. I think Manoah is. There's a number of different guys. But Vladdy's the big one because he's a year away from being a free agent. And if they don't figure it out between now and tomorrow at 1, he'll still be on your team next year, but you're going to arbitration again. And then it just becomes one more thing. Feels like you're poking at the guy. You can't get a deal done big picture long term. You can't even avoid arbitration.
Dude, especially when you're in that position, because when I went to arbitration, I'm like, I'm the only player that's ever gone to arb with this organization. Mm-hmm. What am I missing here?
Yeah.
And I'm a contributor. So this guy's looking at everyone else getting paid, and there's been a lot of guys getting paid, and this guy's going through this. He's probably like, screw you guys, man.
It can't help the relationship. It simply can't. And here's what Buster Olney said of ESPN this morning on the offseason and kind of where Vladdy falls in line.
That Vladdy's looking for closer to 450. I just know that the Blue Jays are not close, and that he wants a lot more than what they're offering. And, it's because of that and because of what happened with Juan Soto and some other free agents. Among the teams that are actually trying to get better in 2025, you can say that the Blue Jays are having the worst offseason of any of them. I mean, it's been a total disaster.
A total disaster.
That's tough.
That's a rough way of describing it. But he brings up an important point there because not every team is equal and every team is looking to do the same thing in the offseason, right? Like there are bad teams that know they're not competing and they'd like to improve, but it's not a mandate. It might be getting younger or shaving some contracts off and moving the goalpost to 26, 27, 28. The Jays said adamantly, like, we need to improve. We think we can compete for a World Series. That's what Mark Shapiro said, that they can compete in 25, and they've done effectively nothing.
Well, if ownership said to them, you speak about mandates, if ownership said to them, you guys better get Boogie in this year, and if you, tossing out words like World Series is
absurd.
Absurd.
Well, yeah.
But if they said this year's got to turn around, and then it's not like they're going to make any harsh decisions on Buster Olney's comments, but are they going to go to these guys and say, this is how you started, this getting Boogie in this year?
Well, exactly. And you've got, of the impact bats, big names still available. Pete Alonso, which I don't see how he really makes sense.
I don't either, man.
First base DH, and that's Vladdy. Bregman and Santander. And Santander's a guy they've been connected to, and he hit a bunch of home runs last year. Switch hitter, can play the outfield. But why would any of those guys want to commit to the Jays if they don't think Vladdy will be here in the future or Bo Bichette will be here in the future? Like, it's clearly tied together. And, like, again, you got to take everything with a grain of salt because it's easy to beat down the Blue Jays right now. It's the easiest thing to do in the sport is to take a shot at the Jays and take a shot at Shapiro and Atkinson. Everyone's doing it. There's anonymous quotes everywhere, right? They think they're this, but they're that. They won't spend. They're this. It's nonstop. Like, people are destroying them. But until they actually act and do something, they have no defense. Like, there's no defense, man. We're into January. They've made the Jimenez trade, and they signed Garcia for the to bring back Garcia into the bullpen. That's about it.
Yeah,
haven't done anything. Haven't declared what their plans are long term. Have not landed a big fish, and they're just simply not a competitive team on paper. They're not even close.
Yeah.
So.
And how many times have you seen it just out of the blue, just improve before spring training? Spring training's next month, isn't it?
They're a month away from pitchers and catchers showing up.
Do you have faith that this could turn? Like, do you have faith that you're going to wake up tomorrow and like a deal's done with Vladdy and they are adding to this group?
And bring in Santander. No, I mean, I'm not holding my breath on that, Noodles.
Well, I'm hoping maybe something happens though. I honestly maybe it's like it's not a news dump, but all of a sudden news dump tonight at 7:01 the minute we're off. Like, here we go.
Maybe it happens. Listen, they're going to sign someone. I've said that for a month now.
Yeah.
They're going to sign a few guys, but is it going to be impact? Because last year it wasn't, and if they replicate what they did last year, I think basically what they're saying, even if they don't want to, is we're not going to be that good, and we're all in trouble here in terms of our security, and who knows what the hell it's going to look like 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah.
Here's Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider. Dregs, I'm curious. We're talking about the Blue Jays here, different sport obviously than you cover, but you can put yourself into a position where if you're an insider and you've got a front office like the Jays in hockey, where high expectations, they're supposed to be bold, they're supposed to be doing something, and nothing's happening yet. Are you checking in like every day? And if so, are you simply what are you asking? Like, are you going to do something? What's going on? Have you missed? Like, take us into the world of reporting on a team with high expectations that's supposed to be active, that's not doing anything.
Well, first of all, your timeline is way off. I wouldn't be checking in every day. I'd be checking in every 15 minutes.
Okay, good.
And I'd be doing that basically around the clock. And it was an old trick back in the day that I used to use, especially at trade deadline, where I would pester my sources, sometimes general managers directly, assistant general managers, whomever. I'd find out who was in the room and probably have at least two, sometimes 3 or 4 guys in not every room, but a lot of the rooms around the league. And if I didn't get a response in, say, an hour, which was extraordinary, I'd start hitting hard. And I'd go, look, bud, I'm going to text you every 5 minutes until you give me something to chew on, something to work with. Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised how often that would work. And you're not always looking for the breaking news, but especially with a club where that they're working on something significant. Or maybe free agent frenzy is a better example because there's more of a looseness around that, and you've got more fish in the barrel to go after. But, look, we've all worked in the environment at Trade Center. Oh, there's my fire alarm. That can't be good. We've all – now, you know what it is? Somebody in my house is trying to manufacture some homemade chicken wings.
Uh-oh.
And by the sounds of things,
not going so well.
It's not going well.
It's headed in the epic fail direction.
Okay.
No, but to just if you guys could tolerate this annoyance, to get back to my thought, sometimes all you need is just a nudge forward. Like, just give us something to work with. Are you keenly interested in this player? Is it getting closer to a trade? Could there be a trade call that's being organized so we can try and close the loop on this? That sort of thing. But I'd go after my sources on a minute-by-minute basis.
All right.
Darren, do you think there's going to be like 5 or 6 teams, probably East and West, that all want the same players, and it's just going to be a race to get that done?
Potentially, sure. Again, we're drifting the lists out of potential guys in play right now, and that almost starts at the beginning of the regular season. And normally, you're looking at the teams with their pending unrestricted free agents, but you're also watching the standings. And by now, mid-season, we can identify for the most part who the buyers are likely going to be and who the sellers are likely going to be, but not completely because of parity around the National Hockey League. But I think that there's a high rent district, and I touched on this a little bit in insider trading and looking at what Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs would be looking for. I mean, we know primarily they're looking at a 3-center, something to add a little bit of bulk, experience, to play a heavier game in that bottom 6. Well, if you're doing that, I mean, you're obviously not looking at Elias Pettersson. I mean, Toronto's not making that type of a deal, or even a Dylan Cousins deal with Buffalo because of the price that you're going to have to pay. So then you move it lower into the pecking order, and it gets expensive down there too, especially early, well in advance of the March 7th trade deadline. But I mean, all the teams in that market for a top 4 defense, unless you're specific to the shot, or all the teams looking for a centerman, especially number 2, number 3, essentially they've got the same names written on their whiteboards.
Dregs, is there an organization off the top of your head or, that we should be keeping an eye on that might be just very active from maybe a dumping player's standpoint? And dumping player's the wrong word, but being proactive to being open for business. And, I know Barry Trotz kind of said, hey, if it's not going to happen this year, we would be looking at doing stuff. But is there another organization that you'd circle and say, I think there's a lot of teams really, really pestering that manager for when he's going to pull the trade?
Yeah, there wouldn't be many at this point, Noodles. And how do you pester Lou Lamoriello with the New York Islanders? You don't. But we keep looking at the potential of Pajot look, I don't think Brock Nelson is going to extend with the New York Islanders, but it is too soon to say that. And if Lou can't get him signed and the Islanders are out of the playoff mix, and unless there's a real big push here, that's the way it's trending, then how can you afford to let a player like that walk? So that's not a dump, but, that's an intriguing name, and the return on Nelson should be, I would think, pretty significant. So, I mean, as you get, again, deeper into the second half of the regular season and there's more of a gap with some of the teams that are, having a disappointing run, maybe you get into the multiplayer turnovers, but I don't see it right now. I don't. Unless Nashville, to your point, Noodles, Barry Trotz wakes up and decides, okay, well, maybe I do need to have a conversation with Brian O'Reilly and find out where his head is at, whether or not he wants another crack at a real good playoff situation or he wants to continue to stick it out here.
With Darren Dreger, a TSN Hockey Insider. On the Leafs front, let me ask you about 2 guys currently out. What are you hearing on Jake McCabe? Like, what should we be bracing for in terms of his timeline on the IR? And Anthony Stolarz, I believe, had that procedure done on December 17th. So we're looking at, it's been about 3 weeks, and the initial thought was he'd miss 4 to 6. Is he on the same timeline? What are you hearing on Stolarz as well?
Yeah, I'm told that he's on the same timeline, but that's not much of an update. So, to target, what day that is this month, I don't think that anybody with the Maple Leafs, including Anthony Stolarz, is able to do that just yet. But I checked on that earlier today, and I also don't get the sense that he's tracking in a negative direction either. It sounds like he's feeling strong, but, he's got to get back onto the ice, and he's got to get into, a continued practice routine before they even consider what the option is for him. On McCabe, again, they're careful with the messaging here because, we do like to do a play-by-play of this day by day. That's Canadian market. Told not long ago that he also is doing very, very well, but he's not likely to be able to play for the Maple Leafs this week. So probably check back on that unless there's a surprise return on the weekend, late in the weekend, and look ahead to next week.
Okay. Has the fire department arrived yet, Dregs, or what's the
story?
No,
I think what's happened is my lovely bride, Holly, has got a big enough towel where she's the towel.
She's fanning it, or
the fan. Isn't that the worst when you're doing your shoulders are blown out? You're like, this is killing me, man.
I can tell even though my home studio office door is closed. I can tell by the cold air that's drifting in from under the door jam that every door in my house is wide open. So I don't know what's going on with those chicken wings, but evidently they're going to be well done.
I guess so. Nothing wrong with that. With Darren Drager at TSN Hockey Insider. So the Bruins, they got skunked yesterday. They lost 4-0 to Edmonton, and they have been struggling, man. They've lost 5 in a row, and is it loud in Boston? And if so, because they've already fired the coach, right? They went through the Swayman thing. What do you see happening there? Because I find them very intriguing. They deserve respect because they've been a perennial contender for a long time. They go to the playoffs every year. This does feel different, certainly than past years, that it's not a guarantee they're going to hold on. If they're straddling that playoff line or possibly miss, what's the reaction like in Boston?
Probably what you're hearing in my background.
Yes. I would think 5-bell alarm system.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we heard the chanting in the third period, fire Sweeney,
right.
After, the Bruins got their lunch handed to them by the Edmonton Oilers. Would I be surprised if that happened? I guess marginally. We know that Boston is a win-now operation. It's been that way for a long, long time. And they're cutthroat, right? They're not afraid to make real difficult business decisions. They did that with Jim Montgomery. Could they do it with Sweeney? Sure they could. I know the relationship between Cam Neely and Don Sweeney is a good one, but at the end of the day, it's about winning hockey games, qualifying for the playoffs, and contending for the Stanley Cup. But I always, I think, though, in fairness, ownership and senior management would measure the body of the work, right? And the body of the work that Don Sweeney has done as GM is pretty significant. It's fairly decorated. I think that's safe to say. Mm-hmm. But what else are you going to do there, fellas? They signed Lindholm, they signed Zadorov in the offseason. You can make a sound case that they didn't get a creative center. We all knew what Lindholm was going into Boston.
Aaron, offensively, I said it at the beginning of the year, there's just not enough offensive punch there other than Pasternak and Marchand on some nights. Like guys like Coyle and Zaka, they're not getting it. Like they just need some offense, and I would try to find some, because you look at their goaltender, that defense core, you look at it and it's like that's a quality D core. They just need some guys to score, some offense, and they don't have it. Lindholm's been a bust. Well, that's the problem.
Well, that's where Dregs is going though. Like you spend all that money on Lindholm and Zadorov. That's what you were expecting, is those guys to I think Zadorov is sometimes miscast. Like, in Calgary, watch him in Van. Like, to me, he might be a 5'6". I think he's playing in the, the 3-hole type of thing. Like,
so why'd you go get him? That's the question. Like, you got Brandon Carlo there. I've always thought it's a pretty good player. What did you need him for?
But it's best available players sometimes, they miss Lindholm. I mean, Lindholm's a hell of a player, right? Like the defenseman. And, and then the Lindholm centerman, to me, he's not a prolific goal scorer. He needs, to play with somebody to help out. And if he has no chemistry with Pasternak, now you're in one, right? Like that's what you look at.
I think the only thing that they can do, assuming they don't do something drastic, and look, I mean, you don't often see a GM getting fired in season because it's, is the new guy going to come in and wave a magic wand? No. They've got some interesting pieces, though, young guys that they probably don't want to unload. But if I'm a rival general manager, or I've got an asset because of where I'm sitting in the standings that Boston thinks is going to help them offensively, so then I'm looking for one of their coveted young guys, whether that's a good young guy in the American League, trying to make his way up to the NHL. Trent Frederick, there's a lot of buzz around this guy, right? He's looking for a new contract. Yeah. Justin Brazeau, you remember him? The Maple Leafs old regime, just didn't have time for that kid. They gave him a chance in the American League. They didn't like the idea of a longer-term project, and look at him now. Some nights he's playing on the top line. He's playing in the top 6 of the Boston Bruins. Well, he needs a new contract. So, there's possibilities there for trade that could help Sweeney and the Boston Bruins, but I don't think they're going to like the asking price.
Darren, if you could, bring out your crystal ball and put, let's say the season ended yesterday and you were to talk about the New York Rangers and what they have done, What do you think happens with them the rest of the season?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
like, are you talking about them missing the playoffs?
Well, I mean, there's the obvious threat of that. I still don't believe it. I do feel like there's enough runway here that group, given the talent that they have, they're going to find a way to come together, get Shesterkin healthy, and get him back on his game and see where they go. But how much worse can it get, right? I mean, they've been hot and they've been cold of late, but more cold than hot. Chris Drury has made some real tough decisions and some very unpopular trades. Who's getting who? I mean, the way they forced Jacob Trouba out of New York, that's going to leave a mark. It's Manhattan. I get it. Free agent players always want to play in New York, but they also want to play for a group, an owner, a manager, a coach they can trust. So that one left some bruising and deep tissue damage. So we'll see how it plays out. What's next? I mean, unless Drury can find a way to get Mika Zibanejad, there's all kinds of speculation that JT Miller's stuff isn't going to go away until either, the Vancouver Canucks flat out come out and say he's not being traded. He has a no-move clause. That's not going away. And the New York rumors connecting Miller to the Rangers, well, that's not going away. But Zibanejad has a no-move clause. So it gets real precarious and difficult for Drury moving forward now, other than the coach. And I don't know. I think Lavi's trying his hardest. I think he's, pulled some tricks out of the old bag. Oh, you know that better than anybody, the buttons that he's probably tried to push.
Yeah, it's the same thing with these guys, though, Darren. They're going on. They mowed through – who was the first guy there?
Well, Gallant.
They mowed through Gallant,
yeah.
And then Quinn.
Yeah.
Like, it's just – now it's Lavi. It's like, are you guys serious?
I get it. I'm with you. With you.
I guess that's – I was going to go with that, Dregs, is – are you shocked that Dolan, who's known as kind of a guy who shoots from the hip and fires people on a whim and stuff, that he's allowed Drury and or Laviolette to, kind of go through this whole process? Because to me, it would just be easy to fire the coach. Like, that's it.
Right.
There's the change. It'd be easy. Not easy, but, hey, Chris, you've had a good run here, but we're going to make a change at the top. Like, is he possibly waiting for somebody? And I said this to a buddy the other day. Like, if I was Chris Drury, I would have had Joel Quenneville on a bird up there and seeing, because I believe he has been cleared, correct, Joel Quenneville, from the league?
Yeah, he's waiting. He could, yeah. I mean, it might take one final call to the commissioner's office just to make sure that everything is copacetic.
Yeah.
I guess what I would wonder, I think Joel is at a place now where he just wants to get back on the bench again, right? Like, there was a time where he would have preferred to pick his spot and go in as a closer as opposed to cleaning up a mess. You got to spill in aisle 3 here. That's not Joel's strength. So, yeah, I mean, that's a name that should be out there and is out there. The Dolan family, James Dolan, has no problem sharing his concerns, his views, and his frustration with every member of the New York Rangers. Because in his defense, that team, that group wants for nothing, right? I mean, he pays dearly for all the creature comforts around that New York Ranger team, so he expects the results. But maybe he is waiting for somebody from a management perspective or from a coaching standpoint, because, beyond moving out more players, what else is left? But there will be casualties. If there is a significant change, more changes moving forward between now and the trade deadline, and the New York Rangers miss the playoffs, then what we saw when Dolan decided that he had enough of Jeff Gorton and John Davidson and that entire group, it might pale in comparison to what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. All right, Dregs, we'll leave it there. Get those shoulders warmed up, buddy. Get in there and start waving.
Boys, you have no idea how angry my wife is with me right now.
You better love those chicken wings too, man.
Why is it your fault, though? Did you make the wings?
No, I don't know. It's probably I don't know what caused the alarms to go off. Like, is the oven dirty? Is the air fryer not working properly? See, I've got multiple appliances in play here, and I strategically put them in there just before the segment started, thinking, okay, by the time we get wrapped up, I'll be able to go in there and flip them over, and we'll all be good. So I buggered up something.
Good luck, man. Get in there and get
I know what happened. I can tell you exactly what happened. He put the broiler on instead of bake. You press broil.
No, I've got an air fryer on my oven too. I hit the air fryer button, but I don't know what.
All right. Good luck.
I'll report back. It might be the biggest news of the day.
Thank you.
Including
Please do. Please do. Please do. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, boys.
There's Darren Dreger, a TSN Hockey Insider. His alarm was going off for 15 minutes.
Straight.
That's a house fire. That's a house fire. Like that's not just a little smoke coming up from the oven.
Like that's neighbors being like, should we call the
exactly.
fire department here? What's going on over there?
Crazy.
All right, Robert Turbin will join us, and we'll get to our best bets later in the hour. Raptors in action against the Knicks tonight. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, best bets still to come later in the hour. Robert Turbin will join us, former NFLer, SiriusXM NFL radio analyst. We've got a wild card weekend this weekend. We're getting close. 2 games on Sunday. You notice, and I saw someone post it, I want to go back and find this. The Houston Texans play the first game on Saturday every single year. And I get the impression it's kind of a shot, yet Houston's a pretty big market. But
what's the complaint, though? Or, is it just an observation?
Well, I think the point being is that, the primetime game, I think, is at night. That's Steelers-Ravens on Saturday night. That's a big one. And then usually the second and third game on Sunday, that's the window, right? You want the 4:25 and the 8:20 kickoff. Those are primetime games.
C.J. Stroud is good, but he ain't moving the needle like Lamar Jackson. Very simple.
Well, exactly. And then you look on Sunday, like that 4 p.m. window, that's Packers-Eagles. Those are 2 hugely popular teams, and it should be a good game. But I got to go back and find it, but it's something. It's like the last 9 times they made the playoffs, they play the first game on Saturday every single year, just like totally routine. You're playing there, get out of the way, and then we'll move on from here. Yeah, this is it here. 2011, 2012, 2015, 2016, 2018, 2019, 2023, 2024, now 2025. 3:30 on Saturday every single year.
Win or have better, I don't know.
Yeah, I
the
guess.
Needle more.
Yeah, they're just, that's the whole thing. It's just they're not moving the needle. Houston and the Chargers are just not 2 teams that people are like dying to see. Yet, it's going to be a good game. Chargers, I think, are favored on the road in Houston for that game. Here's Robert Turbin of SiriusXM, former NFLer. What's happening, Robert?
What's up, fellas? How we doing? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, man. We're looking forward to this weekend. It's going to be fun. And, before we get to the games, it feels like this week it's more about coaching and the coaching carousel. There was a report today, I guess, that Tom Brady had personally reached out to Bill Belichick about coming to Vegas and taking over there. It doesn't sound like Belichick's interested in doing that. But from your perspective, what do you expect out of Brady as an owner? It's a minority ownership, but he is an owner. It sounds like he's got a pretty powerful voice in Vegas. Do you think he will benefit that team?
Well, I think so. I mean, you talk about when it comes to his playing experience and being able to evaluate players, especially quarterbacks. I mean, that's where he's going to be able to bring the most value. When it comes to hiring coaches and general managers and being part of that decision-making, I don't know how impactful he can be there. But, he's a ball player, and he played for a long time at the highest level, the greatest quarterback of all time. I think there's no doubt about that. And so when it comes to being able to, use his experience with players that he played with, players that he played against, and being able to understand, what are the qualities, what are those intricate things that maybe scouts miss that they don't see that, kind of tie into the intangibles to help a player become great. Remember, Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick himself, so he wasn't even highly regarded coming out of college. And so I think really his vision on that when it comes to players is where he's going to be able to have the most impact.
Robert, what do you think you're going to see out of Russ? I mean, they had a crazy season. At one point they were 9-2, and I don't know what happened to him, but he just kind of morphed into the Russ that was in Denver. Do you think he would be your guy if you were trying to pick a starting quarterback? And if he is, what do you think you're going to see from him?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about starting this weekend.
Oh, it's going to be
Yeah,
him. But would you go to Justin Fields?
Right.
Would you even think of it? I mean, Russ has struggled here. That offense is brutal
of course.
right
Of course I would. I would consider playing Justin Fields, and I think he will play. I would have a package for him. Really the fact that the Steelers sort of veered away from having those Justin Fields packages, and I know that he had gotten injured in practice and he was out for a couple of weeks, but the fact that they veered away, from it towards the end of the season, I think was a mistake. You got to be able to find some ways to utilize Justin Fields and his playmaking ability in order to keep this offense going. What do they lack? They lack playmakers and they lack playmaking ability. Justin Fields is undoubtedly, one of those guys that can do some things for you as far as making plays. So, I would start Russ. Russ does have the experience. He's just he's very stubborn in his belief in himself, which is a good thing. I think that's a good thing for anybody. So I would go with him, but definitely be ready to see some Justin Fields. I think there's no doubt about that.
And he'll be going up against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Where do you stand on the Lamar or Josh Allen for MVP debate?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm still leaning. I mean, the numbers are just crazy, for Lamar Jackson this season. His impact on the game is unbelievable, but I'm still leaning towards Josh Allen to win MVP, this year, just because of all the things that, he's been able to accomplish with a little bit lesser, of a roster on both sides of the football. And, Josh Allen, he accounts for 80% of the success that this offense is able to have in Buffalo, where I think Lamar Jackson is about 63 or 64%. I'm not really a numbers guy, but that's pretty significant in terms of, how much your team, how much value you're bringing, to the offense. And so, for me, it's still Josh Allen.
So you look at these games coming up. Is there any potential, we'll call it upsets, that you could maybe circle and say, I could see this happening?
The Green Bay Packers are just such a weird team to me because they're so good, but they haven't really beat anybody, this season as far as, quality wins are concerned. And you don't like the way that they're heading into the playoffs, but they were kind of similar in some ways last year, and they went into Dallas and completely demolished Dallas in Dallas, and was able to advance to the next round and almost really beat the 49ers the following week. And so, listen, the Eagles have been dominant all season long, but they've got their holes and their weaknesses too. And if there's a chance Green Bay could really exploit that and take advantage and find a way to get an upset in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Green Bay is an intriguing one because they just have stumbled into the playoffs, and their pass rush is inconsistent. Their wide receivers have really struggled. Now Watson's done for the year. It feels
could be
like
toast, Hayesy. They could be toast.
Well, I mean, it feels like it's got to be the Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love. Like, it's got to be Jacobs, I guess. And do you see that, Robert? Do you see it being basically Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, and whoever has more of an impact on the game could win that game?
I think that's the difference. The fact that Josh Jacobs sort of brings this downhill mentality, this physical mentality to the run game. If he can get going, it can get hard on the Eagles. And then you look at the fact that defensively, Green Bay, they're not top five by any stretch, but, McKinney and some of those guys can make some plays on the back end. We'll see what the health is for Alexander, but, the Eagles have been prone to turn the football over. Jalen Hurts, that can happen with this offense. And so, man, if Josh Jacobs can get going and the Green Bay defense can find a way to take the football away, I think Green Bay can pull off the upset.
All right. I like hearing that as a Packer fan. I love hearing that with Robert Turbin. We asked you about Allen or Lamar for MVP. What about Bills or Ravens in terms of who you would fear the most if you were the Chiefs? Which team in the AFC would scare you the most if you were on Kansas City?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. That's a tough one. These AFC games are so tight, so close. But I think that I'd have to lean towards Baltimore in that question, over Buffalo, particularly because Derrick Henry. I think that he's an X factor in this, and the game was so close in week one. Had it not been for a couple of offside penalties on the Ravens, the tackle not lining up on the line of scrimmage or whatever, and a big toe by Isaiah Likely, the game may have turned out a little differently, for the Ravens in that week one matchup. So I still think it's the Ravens. Derrick Henry is a future Hall of Famer. He's a problem. And I know that the Bills beat the Kansas City Chiefs early in the season, but it feels like that's what they always do until they see him in the playoffs. But their lack of playmakers, the Bills, that worries me in a playoff game. And so I lean towards the Ravens in that matchup.
Would it be crazy just to even bet against the Chiefs and what they're capable of? It seems like, I don't know what kind of run they could possibly go on, but they always just seem to find a way to get it done. Low-scoring game, blowout, like they know how to win. Like, do you think they're just going to continue that or what?
I do, especially in the AFC. I mean, really, the only way I can see the Chiefs losing is potentially in the Super Bowl in a rematch against the Eagles or maybe even against Detroit. But, the AFC teams, the Ravens, the Bills, the Steelers even, I mean, these guys, I just feel like the Chiefs have the upper hand. And they'll be in some close games. They'll be good games. They'll be tight games. But, the Chiefs, they will find a way, I think, to get back to the dance and find their way, in the Super Bowl this season again.
Crazy, yet not at all unexpected based on what they've done this year and they've done for a number of years. He is Robert Turbo. Great catching up with you, Robert. Enjoy the games this weekend.
Hey, thanks for having me, fellas.
You got it. And it does feel like, and this is, it's almost impossible to believe or envision, but at some point you're waiting for Mahomes to actually make a mistake in a big moment, and that's how you're going to win it, right? Like, in other words, it'll be a two-minute drill, Bills up 27-24, and the guy actually throws a pick finally, and you can take
like
a knee.
So many times it's like 4th and 2, 4th and 6, 4th in the final drive. I think it was that way last year, and he just gets it done.
He always gets it done.
Brady was the same, man. 4th and 2, game on the line. With like, if they don't get it, the game's over. They always get it.
Always get it.
But
Always.
but here's the thing, though. They get the calls, too. That's what everybody complains about. 4th and 2,
no
it's
doubt.
something
If there's a PI available with a Brady or Mahomes throw, they're getting it, man.
We found something down the field. Oh, really?
Exactly.
Did you?
That is, I don't know if that's true or not, but every time I see it, it's like, there's the Chiefs getting another call. This is what happens.
Dude,
Brady
the
gets
memes this year have been outrageous. Here's Patrick Mahomes at a Christmas party with all his friends, and it's all referees.
Refs, yeah. I've seen that, too.
So good. That one
I
was
don't know.
great. Him just handing them gifts and them opening it with smiles on their face.
Yeah.
But I guess you earn that at the same time. When it's natural when you get human element. The refs are like, I'm pretty sure he didn't just screw that up. Probably something happened that led to that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
and they're on alert. They're waiting for it, and that's the benefit of that one seed in both conferences. Like, you get your feet up. You're not even playing this weekend, and then teams have to come into your stadium. Like that. Like, Ford Field was so loud on Sunday night, and Arrowhead is crazy all the time.
Yeah.
So if you're the Steelers or the Ravens or the Bills or the Vikings or Rams or whatever, you gotta win, and then you gotta go and face a rested team who's better than you on paper in their house.
Yeah. Right. And it's a mind
Good
screw
luck.
against Mahomes. Like you kind of like they said about Jack Nicklaus when he was on a tear, most majors ever, that he knew he was going to win. The other players knew he was going to win, and he knew the other players knew that he was going to win.
Right.
And it just makes you start doing stupid things. Like you just, I don't know, you just start doing weird things, man, and the guy ends up winning.
Well, I mean, listen, you're setting it up where if you look at the bracket in the AFC and the NFC, let's say all the favorites win. That means in the divisional round, you're looking at the Texans playing the Chiefs. Chiefs would destroy them. I think even if the Chargers beat the Chiefs or beat the Texans, the Chargers would be huge underdogs, and I think the Chiefs would win and possibly by 8, 10, 12 points. But then it would set up Bills-Ravens in the second round. Like, that is what you're praying for if you're the NFL. You're just begging the Ravens to win and the Bills to win. So you're guaranteed one matchup of Mahomes versus Allen or Mahomes versus Lamar. Like, that's the Super Bowl, I think, in terms of anticipation. I think that game would be even more hyped, maybe than the Super Bowl. If it was, let's say, Bills-Chiefs again in the AFC Championship game, that game would be remarkable. And just there'd be so much buzz. And at some point, one of them has got to beat the guy. Like, that's the reality.
Yeah.
Like, Allen could win the MVP. Maybe Lamar gets his third. Good for you. When the dust settles, 15 in Kansas City still waiting for you. Yeah. And you got to beat them. Like, take all your MVPs and your regular season success and shove it, man. If you can't beat the guy, it doesn't mean that much.
Yeah, and you might think you have him beat, and there's 13 seconds on the clock, and he's still gonna just shove it down your throat.
But eventually,
the Undertaker meme.
There will be a time on our show where we're having – it'll be different, but Mahomes will be talking like, hey, you know what, the game's passed. Like the Aaron Rodgers
it won't be
talk.
for the next
but
little bit. It's not
going to
be Mahomes choking. It's going to be a brutal call or a missed catch. It ain't going to ever be Mahomes.
Well, I mean, at some point the guy's got to age out, but it's not happening in the next 7 or 8 years. That's what's terrifying. He's still in his late 20s, I think.
Yeah, I know, but it just there is
think about that organization.
It will happen.
Like
it's scary, but
they have an opportunity to three-peat. And for the next 7 or 8 years after this one, they're thinking we have a hell of a chance to win a Super Bowl.
That's right.
Like, what a feeling that must be.
What an incredible setup to be in. It's awesome. And Wild Card Weekend has arrived, and every incredible playoff moment on TSN is powered by Bud Light, a refreshing taste that's easy to enjoy. Tune in game day for pulse-pounding action. All right, there you go. Our best bet's still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. One play tonight, Canucks on the puck line, plus 1.5. You got to pay some juice. I think they show up and play and compete. I wouldn't be shocked if they won tonight. Right? They were in it in Montreal. JT Miller, 4 points. He's got to carry it over and have a game tonight. Pettersson's a game-time decision. Hughes is back. They got to get going, man. They got to get going. And I'm willing to take them on the puck line tonight. Keep it close. One-score game at a minimum. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Live same-game parlays are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 19+. Physically located in Ontario. Leafs in Carolina tomorrow. Wonder if they got down there and maybe teed it up today. Maybe played some golf. I don't know. Who knows?
Is the weather good there now, though?
Probably
It gets a little bit chilly in January, February. But chilly down there, it's like 50, 60, where I would be like, are we golfing? And other guys down there would be like, it's too cold, man. I'm like, you're nuts.
That's so infuriating. That drives me crazy.
And you see Canadians down there, they will golf from morning until night.
Yeah. 8 degrees? Just layer up and go play.
Yeah. Like, I was looking at weather. I was just golfing down in Georgia in December, and like 8 in the people were like, the weather's going to be so cold in the morning. I'm like, look at the weather.
Yeah.
Let's tee it up and play.
Right. Sun's up, man.
Yes. As long as the sun is up and you're nowhere near Toronto, you're golfing. I don't care.
Absolutely.
You want to wear a toque, go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's such a luxury to be able to say, I'm just going to, too cold. It's 8 degrees and sunny, not playing.
Yeah.
We're up here, man, in April and in October. If it's 8 degrees, it's a beautiful, you're ecstatic. That's great
Beauty
weather.
day. 7 degrees up here is my cutoff.
Yeah.
7 and sunny. You need some sun, though, man.
You need sun.
If you don't get that sun, you are in for it.
Little wind that howls through you. You don't like that?
Yes. If it's one of those, like, 7 feels like 4 and it's dark and windy, you're like, that is pushing.
Not a good decision. It's just not enjoyable.
It's tough at that point. Yeah, it is tough. Anyway, we'll see what the Leafs have in store tomorrow night. And we got a few games in the NHL tonight. Again, the Flames and the Kings have been postponed.
That's crazy stuff,
those wildfires
man.
out there. It's so scary in L.A.
Scary. It's
really
scary. I've got our buddy, you guys met my buddy Joey there.
Yeah.
Like he took a picture from his bedroom window last night and sent it to me. Like, he's not, fingers crossed, going to be affected, but Like there's people that just wiped out, like Malibu wiped the, Palisades.
Oh, they're saying it
out.
might reach Santa Monica, and if that happens, that's
now you're in
big trouble, man.
Yeah.
Big trouble.
Scary.
Yeah, it's really scary stuff. So, all right. Raps in action tonight, Leafs back in action tomorrow. We're out of here. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
Thanks to everyone for voting my coaches list number 1.
Yeah, look at you.
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.
East to west.